Hello, my name is Claire Smith and I run Beyond Investing, the world's first and only cruelty-free investment platform. Across all our investment programs, we are investing for humanity. I have spent 34 years in financial markets, following a degree in chemical engineering and business administration. Throughout my adult life, I have been an environmentalist, turning vegetarian at the age of 15 and more latterly vegan, which means I do not consume any animal products. This presentation is called Combating Animal Exploitation, the Next Frontier in Sustainable and Impact Investing. The picture here dramatically demonstrates the amount of land mammals in three categories: man, livestock, and domestic animals, and the tragically small number of wild mammals that remain as a proportion of the total. This massive decline in wildlife is directly attributable to the enormous scale of the human footprint on Earth and the vast numbers of livestock that are bred for human consumption, which require huge amounts of land and resources. This domination of humans over animals and exploitation of trillions of animals, when you include sea life, leads directly to loss of habitat for wild animals due to competition. In the water, there is direct depletion of animal life through fishing and environmental damage caused by dredging and abandoned fishing equipment, as well as the waste produced by the exploitation of land animals running off into rivers and oceans. Just think of how wildlife could rebound if we were not using Earth's resources to nourish all that livestock. An equitable distribution and use of the Earth's resources is behind the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, created in 2016 and designed to be achieved by 2030. Not only did all UN member nations sign up to the goals, so they could form the basis of government policy, but the SDGs underpin many investors' attempts to invest sustainably and with positive impact towards the aims described in the goals. It's extremely important to understand the goals segmented here into three types: biosphere, society, and economy. Each layer is dependent on the layer below, with the four on the bottom layer being fundamental to our survival on Earth. These are climate action, clean water and sanitation, life on land, and life below water. Arresting damage to our climate, fresh water supply, and the natural environment is crucial to the proper running of society. Depletion of these essential requirements for life on Earth will undermine our ability to have a functioning society and therefore a strong economy. In this and the following slides, I will demonstrate how human exploitation of animals is undermining our chances of achieving many of the Sustainable Development Goals. Starting with biosphere. Damage to the biosphere could make large swathes of the Earth uninhabitable, and in the worst climate scenarios, the Earth would be completely impossible to survive in at all. There are many negative aspects to the exploitation of animals on the environment, far more than I've detailed here, but here are just a few examples. While fishing is obviously bad for those fish that are caught and the wildlife that comes as bycatch, which is many times more than the fish that are actually eaten, smaller fish also are caught in the vast nets and ground up to be used as feed for land animals. There has been considerable debate around the percentage of greenhouse gases that can be attributed to animal farming. A recent review of all available literature puts the figure at 37%, and that proportion is increasing as more meat is being eaten, while CO2 from fossil fuels is declining. The primary greenhouse gas associated with animal agriculture is methane, 84 times more powerful at heating than CO2 within the 12 years that it remains in the atmosphere. After that, methane breaks down into CO2, but remains in the atmosphere in that form, continuing to warm Any activity that emits high amounts of methane into the atmosphere is accelerating the warming effect, risking the triggering of tipping points, such as the permafrost melting, which itself releases methane, ice melting, which triggers the so-called albedo effect, where darker land absorbs more heat than the ice that it replaces, which reflects, coral reef die-offs, and forest fires, each in their turn contributing to further warming. Animal agriculture uses about a third of our planet's fresh water for irrigation of plants to feed animals and for the animals themselves. Even more water is used in processing animal products, such as turning skins into leather, which involves vast quantities of water and chemicals. Disposing of the massive volumes of animal waste, many times the waste produced by humans, pollutes water, produces dangerous bacteria, and kills sea life and fish in rivers. Animal agriculture also requires massive amounts of land to grow the food needed by the billions of animals bred for slaughter. Thus, animal agriculture is responsible for most deforestation, especially in rainforests, which are important land-based carbon sinks. The ocean is the largest carbon sink, and this is being decimated by fishing as well. The vast majority of farmland is used for livestock. According to researchers from Oxford, meat, dairy, egg, and fish farming use 83% of the world's farmland, yet provide only 18% of the world's calories. Animals reared for human consumption consume 6 times more protein than they actually produce. Clearly, this imbalance is a massive waste of resources and massively damaging for biodiversity, since most animal feed crops are monoculture soy, wheat, or corn, which are all heavily subjected to agrochemicals. Animal exploitation has an impact on our ability to achieve the SDGs as a society, such as the goals of no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, and gender equality. Industrialized agriculture is damaging rural communities, where property prices fall when concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, move in. These enormous factory farms are where cows and pigs are rapidly fattened up on grain in a terrifyingly automated and inhumane environment. Highly toxic animal waste is dumped next to the vast feedlot buildings and often sprayed into the air in the surrounding areas. These highly mechanized operations require lower skilled labor, depressing wages, and often relying on the exploitation of migrant workers. Land grabs are common. The use of valuable farmland to produce crops purely to feed animals means there is less food available to feed humans directly. Hunger is particularly prevalent in countries where crops are grown for animal feed. It is frankly obscene that this food is being diverted to feed animals. Paradoxically, the more meat is eaten, the more humans will starve. Animal exploitation is thus directly undermining the UN SDG of zero hunger. And as animal agriculture itself is a key cause of climate change and drought, our ability to produce enough food is also being seriously undermined. The negative health aspects of animal agriculture are threefold. Firstly, eating animal products, meat, eggs, dairy, and fish, has been found in peer-reviewed research to be associated with the 15 causes of premature death and chronic illness. According to the American Heart Association, eating meat increases the risk of stroke, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, certain cancers, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and processed meat has been classified by the World Health Organization in the same category as causes of cancer, such as smoking and asbestos. The most extensive studies of health across blue zones and in the China study demonstrate the benefits of a plant-based diet. This leaves aside the fact that the animals are diseased, reared in overcrowded, polluted conditions, fed badly, and engineered to grow swiftly to kill weight. These overcrowded and unsanitary conditions lead to a high level of antibiotic usage, with around 80% of antibiotics sold being fed to animals on a prophylactic basis to prevent disease in low doses for their entire lives. These are exactly the conditions under which bacteria readily mutate and become antibiotic resistant. Antibiotic resistance is already responsible for at least 700,000 human deaths per year around the world, a figure that is anticipated to rise up to 10 million by 2050. Should antibiotics fail to work anymore in the face of antibiotic resistant bacteria, healthcare would be crippled, and every major infection could be life-threatening. Coronaviruses are zoonotic, meaning they are transmitted between animals and people. Right now, as I record this presentation, entire countries are under lockdown. Unnecessary travel is banned, borders are closed, and isolation and quarantine are being enforced because of the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus. This is the latest in a series of viruses that have leapt from animals to humans as a function of keeping animals in proximity with each other and with the humans directly exploiting them. Were it not for animal exploitation, it would be close to impossible for coronaviruses to spread to humans. Human beings impose upon animals the conditions which allow diseases to explode within animal populations. No animal chooses to be trapped in the cramped and unsanitary conditions of factory farms or live animal markets. Stopping animal exploitation would therefore prevent future coronaviruses from reaching the human population. Continuing dangerous practices like live animal markets and factory farms only ensure that these health threats continue to disrupt human society. When disease spreads amongst humans, the first reaction is how to cure it, and if possible, vaccinate against it. This is a natural reaction, but unfortunately, most medical research involves animal testing. By reaching immediately for animals as biological models, there is a fatal flaw. They are not humans and will not have the same reaction to diseases or drugs. In fact, so bad is the accuracy of animal tests that drugs that work in animals fail in 95% of cases when applied to humans by being dangerous to humans, too dangerous to use, as well as being simply ineffective. From a societal perspective, having any members of society employed in a job that involves killing hundreds, if not thousands, of animals per day and becoming inured to the vision of murder on a mammoth scale must by definition be harmful. Research bears this out, with clusters of violence, especially domestic violence perpetrated on women and children, being found in communities close to slaughterhouses. Furthermore, sexual harassment in the meat industries appears to be rampant, and women are underpaid for the same work. Continuing on with the SDGs related to the economy, let's examine decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, and responsible consumption and production. Whether a job involving killing is decent work is certainly open to question, but in any event, the safety records of slaughterhouses are dreadful, made worse by drives to cut costs and increase profits by inexorably speeding up the slaughter line. Slaughterhouse and meat processing workers are predominantly Black and brown people living in low-income communities. The horrendous working conditions lead to 100% employee turnover annually, and workers are forced to work overtime and discouraged from reporting injuries and dangerous working practices. Workers in these facilities and in other areas of animal agriculture, like CAFOs, and on fishing trawlers, are often migrants and subject to human rights abuses. An Environmental Justice Foundation report found incidences of slavery, debt bondage, insufficient food and water, filthy living conditions, physical and sexual assault, and even murder on board these ships. Industrial agriculture keeps farmers in penury through schemes where they are responsible for the installation and upkeep of facilities and are paid purely based on the number of animals reared. These animals are supplied by the big meat producers with no guarantee of a decent price at the end. The farmers take on huge debt and are effectively indentured labour. In terms of responsible consumption and production, food waste is a major problem. Research suggests that by weight, meat, dairy, and seafood account for 30 to 40% of food waste. This may imply that it is less wasteful than fruit, vegetables, and grain. But when you consider that any animal product wasted is not only the product itself, but all the food that the animal was fed, as well as the value of that animal's life, the proportions are completely upended. The amount of waste that this involves is laid bare by the fact that globally animals consume 5 times as much as the human population. The human population could readily be eating plants directly and would need far fewer plants, relieving the pressure on natural resources. No hunger need occur, since the number of calories that can be produced on existing farmland in terms of plants would easily feed the current human population and indeed another 2 billion people. It is irresponsible to waste so much food on feeding animals. Thankfully, humans appear to be waking up to the alternatives to the use of animals, as demonstrated by growing interest in the term plant-based, as recorded by Google search activity in the last decade. This interest appears to be converting to changes in lifestyle, as shown in recently released data from leading retail analytic and insights company Ipsos, indicating that 9.7 million Americans are now following a plant-based diet. Evidence of public interest in switching to plant-based diets comes from new SPINS retail sales data from the US released in March 2020, which shows grocery sales of plant-based foods that directly replace animal products have grown 29% in the past 2 years to $5 billion. Evidence of interest in sustainable investing is shown by the growth in funds run to sustainable mandates, which have gone from 22.8 trillion to 30.5 trillion from 2016 to 2018. 2/3 of this pool of assets is applying negative screening, that is, refusing to invest in certain stocks because of various environmental, social, or governance reasons, so-called ESG. Many are focused on the socially responsible screens of the past, which were often based around religious criteria, but an increasing number are imposing policies around fossil fuels, gender, and corporate governance. One of the largest trends has been the removal of fossil fuels from portfolios, with now $11 trillion committed to divest, and some portfolios having completely excluded fossil fuels already. Key trends are expected to be the accelerating climate crisis, so a continuation of the divestment theme, but possibly looking outside of fossil fuels into other high carbon industries. Another key trend is to examine companies' business models, questioning not just how they are doing business, but whether their business model is indeed sustainable or could ever be made so, or if they are simply in the wrong business and need to transition for the benefit of the environment and society. Change in society comes from an alignment of three levers: consumers, citizens, and capital. Consumers have a role to play in choosing sustainable and cruelty-free products, provided these are made available on the market. Citizens can campaign for laws, regulations, subsidies, and fiscal policies to be amended in favour of animals and the environment. Capital is a vital piece of the puzzle, since what gets financed gets done, and conversely, the withdrawal of financing will constrain damaging companies. It is our aim at Beyond Investing to direct global capital flows in such a way that supports the efforts of consumers and citizens, enabling the growth of companies providing solutions and diminishing those companies whose practices harm animals and destroy biodiversity and the planet. Around the world, there is a clear trend for capital to become more conscious, so multiple structures need to be set up. As investors, vegans have had nowhere to put their money in view of the complete absence of fund products that address their concerns. Equally, aside from the lucky few, vegan founders are starved of capital to fund and grow their businesses. It is these needs that we seek to address through the Beyond platform. As opposed to focusing in one narrow area of financial markets, the Beyond Investing platform seeks to provoke capital flows across the entire spectrum of capital markets and funding, to cause disruption to the existing system of animal exploitation, and to support businesses that provide cruelty-free alternatives. Evidently, capital markets financing and investment occurs across different asset classes, different sizes of companies, different parts of the balance sheet, in such a way that the financing is appropriate to both investor and company. We question, however, whether existing capital markets currently offer the range of alternatives necessary to meet the needs of companies that provide cruelty-free plant-based alternatives, and whether currently available investment products adequately reflect the needs of investors concerned with the rights and welfare of animals, and who wish to use their capital to drive this change forward. Looking at the range of investment products and financing solutions typically used, Beyond Investing has identified ways to impose anti-animal exploitation criteria across the span of investment strategies through a coherent and consistent policy framework. Within the large cap space, Beyond Investing designs cruelty-free and climate-friendly investing programs in public equity markets, and is the architect of the US Vegan Climate Index, a stock index which screens out all animal exploitation and fossil fuel and other causes of harm to humans and the environment from a US market benchmark. With around 267 stocks in this portfolio, largely market cap weighted. This product provides a solution to retail and institutional investors wishing to embed cruelty-free and environmentally friendly principles in their core US large cap allocation. The removal of some 16% of stocks involved in the creation and sale of animal-derived products, another 15% that test on animals, and just under 2% for the use of animals in sport and entertainment, means that over 32% of the market is removed for reasons of animal exploitation. Other large exclusions are relating to fossil fuel, its extraction and refining, energy production using fossil fuel, and the financing of fossil fuel. These add up to another 11% removed. Weapons and other human rights and environmental exclusions remove another 4.5% of the market. Together, some 48% of the market cap is removed. The portfolio is left more heavily weighted to technology, financials, and communications than the benchmark S&P 500 index. The industrial sector is broadly held in the same proportion, but energy and consumer staples are largely absent, given the number of excluded stocks, and consumer discretionary, utilities, healthcare, and materials are dramatically reduced. The combination of exclusions leads to an environmental footprint in terms of greenhouse gases, carbon on the chart, waste generation, and water consumption that is considerably better than competitor indexes from large index providers that claim to be ESG, whether they do some negative screening, best-in-class selection, or an analysis of companies' intentions in respect of corporate social responsibility. It is intended that the US Vegan Climate Index be the first of a range of stock and bond indexes that enshrine the same set of policies in Europe, Asia, emerging markets, and globally. The Vegan Climate Index can also act as a benchmark for active strategies that are prepared to restrict themselves to the same investment universe. Whereas in current stock markets, there are few purely vegan and cruelty-free companies, there are several impending IPOs in the space due to the fast growth in demand for these products. To exploit this growing market sector, Beyond Investing has created a global small to mid-cap growth strategy called the Vegan World Strategy, by sifting through global listed equity markets for companies whose products already adhere to vegan principles and which are set to benefit from increasing demand for plant-based and cruelty-free products. Asian stocks strongly feature among this basket, as plant-based products are more common in that region from a cultural perspective, and the fact that many agricultural crops used in developing vegan alternatives are grown there. At the furthest end of the scale, Beyond Impact's vegan venture capital investing is proactively seeking out high potential startups and early stage growth companies whose products are superior, scalable, and sustainable, and which have the potential to save many animals' lives, as well as providing exceptional investment returns. It seeks to find solutions for the four main causes of harm coming from the use of animals, both from the perspective of humans and animals, investing for humanity in both senses of the word. Businesses in which these solutions are found would include plant-based and direct replacements for animal proteins, and other uses such as in convenience foods like baking and condiments. Advanced technologies such as precision fermentation and cellular agriculture have been included for their value in providing biosimilar versions of animal products that are complete replacements. Investments have been made in companies facilitating a vegan lifestyle, such as catering and content media. Looking outside of the consumption of food, solutions for animal testing and food safety have been found, as well as clothing and accessories using vegan and sustainable materials. Since 2017, Beyond Impact has made investments in 21 companies, broken down across themes of cultivated and plant-based replacements in products derived from animals, healthy vegan convenience foods, animal testing alternatives, and cruelty-free lifestyle products. These companies are also geographically spread, with 9 in North America, 11 in Europe and the Middle East, 1 in Asia, although 3 of the portfolio companies are in fact linked to Singaporean accelerators. Lastly, Beyond Animal, a technology platform funded by Beyond Investing's co-founder, aims to support the vegan economy through a humanity platform to facilitate connections, enable supply chain solutions, and provide funding solutions through the crowd. Beyond Animal will leverage the commitment and support of the vegan community to provide funding to companies across all sectors and geographies, provided that their products accelerate the transition to a kinder, cleaner, healthier world. The pipeline of deals through this platform could enable microcredit funds to be created that support all vegan businesses, not just those that are attractive to venture capital. For those businesses experiencing high growth, working capital financing will prevent founders from having to continually sell equity to finance operations. Please sign up for Beyond Animal at www.beyondanimal.com to become part of this humanity platform, and do complete the ethical investment survey to make us aware of the types and size of investments that you may be interested in. This quote by Albert Schweitzer embodies the philosophy behind our investment programs, and we would encourage you also to view our short promotional film at the link shown on screen. Narrated by Peter Egan, views of this film support the charity Suffering Strays of Sarajevo. Citations and credits for the information presented in this presentation are on this slide, and we would draw your attention to the important disclaimer and provide our contact details should you have any further questions. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.